everyone. I'm Mel Bound. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the founder of This Mum Runs, and welcome to the third in a series of interviews that we're bringing to you as part of our My Time, My Space, My Pace campaign. Now, as you know, this campaign is all about raising awareness of the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on women's physical and mental health over the past 2 years, and to encourage women to reflect on the impact on their own lives and to empower all of us to take back control of our own health and well-being. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Now, in our COVID 2 years on survey, 51% of women reported the pandemic has affected their well-being, and 83% have told us it's had a negative impact on their mental health. What's so interesting is how many of you are reporting they're finding the transition that's happening right now from the end of the pandemic back into what everyone's calling normal life, and all of the challenges that that's brought for us. And the collective trauma that we're all experiencing is still impacting our everyday lives. In many cases now more than ever. So things like anxiety, depression, loneliness, guilt, Jess, we were talking about that just now, weren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Stress, trauma, nervousness, fear, all of those things are words that have come up in our survey. So with all of that in mind, I'm so delighted to be joined this week by the amazing self-confident, self-compassion guru, Jess Woodsford. Jess is a personal leadership coach, trainer and facilitator, and in her role as a coach, she absolutely loves working with individuals and teams to explore how to make empowered changes in their lives and careers. Jess, welcome. So happy to welcome you today.
Thanks, Mel.
And now today's session is going to be all about finding ways to prioritise ourselves after experiencing trauma. So we're going to be talking about self-compassion and transitioning through change and rediscovering joy after a period of what's been a pretty stressful couple of years. So should we start by you just giving us a bit of an intro to yourself and your work and some of the things that you've been doing recently?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mel. So, I mean, you did a wonderful intro, but yeah, I'm Jess Woodsford. I am a personal leadership coach. And like you said, I work with individuals to make empowered changes in their lives to basically bring more joy, more purpose to their personal and their professional lives. And I think the reason that I was so interested when I heard about the campaign, Mel, is what I have seen from the women that I've been working with is just, this sense of exhaustion. Like women are exhausted, yet they are still in this, survival mode. Everyone's still got their armor on, they've got their game face on, and they're still absolutely sort of trying to power through things. And then the other thing that I've sort of seen with the women that I've been working with is this essence of almost like trying to rush back to stuff. Like, we had so much going on before the pandemic, didn't we? And actually, I think probably we were all quite guilty of filling our time to the absolute max. And then what I'm seeing is, we all had this break, we all had to put everything down. And suddenly it's like everyone is rushing to pick everything back up again. And the pressure on everybody to do that and to be absolutely succeeding at it and to be able to juggle all this stuff again when we haven't done for so long. And then the other thing that I've really seen from people is this like search for purpose and search for joy, and this kind of feeling that if we're going to have gone through something so impactful and traumatic and stressful for everybody, something good has got to come out of it. And so this added pressure of wanting to be, the person that came out of the pandemic thinner, or the person that came out having picked up new skills, or the person that's made the career change, like it's just an added layer of pressure that we're putting on ourselves to sort of like claw some kind of purpose and good things out of what we've all experienced.
God, yeah, I totally relate to so much of that, Jess. And I think as women, we're so guilty, aren't we, of trying to put this incredibly kind of positive facade on our lives. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, we're pedaling like crazy, just trying to stay afloat. I wanted to just chat really briefly about this idea of guilt as well. We were talking before we started recording about the kind of going through this transition from actually what was quite a traumatic couple of years to suddenly this pressure to return to normal life, and almost that guilt of actually feeling able to say that was really hard. Yeah. I felt that was really hard, but I don't want to say it because I feel guilty even expressing that. I wonder whether you could talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying to you earlier, Mel, I caught COVID just before Christmas, and I found out like the day before Christmas Eve or something like that, and I caught it on the one night out that I've had in 18 months or something like that, and the guilt I felt for being so selfish as to have caught COVID and have ruined everybody's Christmas.
Yeah.
And I felt so guilty, but I also felt guilty for feeling guilty and guilty for feeling bad, and then worried that I was impacting the terrible Christmas we were going to have where we couldn't go and visit any family by feeling guilty. And so it's just this like layer upon layer upon layer. And I think guilt is such a it's such a negative feeling. It's such a negative feeling because it's not even like seeing something bad that's happening and going, oh, that makes me feel sad, and then moving on. It's this like this sort of demon that just keeps badgering away at you. And I think we've all got this guilt about, should we have done things better? Should we have been a better homeschooler? Should we have been a better wife? Should we be a better parent? Should we have been a better employee for those poor people that were having to balance all these different things? And actually, essentially, we need to accept that nobody actually is putting those expectations on us except for ourselves. And the need to be kind and the need to show self-compassion to ourselves, I don't think it's ever been higher. I mean, you'd never talk to your friends like that, would you? The way that we talk to ourselves, like there's no situation where you'd have turned around to your friends in the pandemic and gone, I mean, I think you could have tried harder. Could you have got your kids to do a bit more work? And I mean, do you think you really did your best when you showed up at work? Because I'm not sure you did. You'd never say it. But the things that we think is okay to say to ourselves is, I mean, it never surprises me, but always kind of astounds me as well.
Yeah. Why do women find that so hard, this idea of self-compassion? I mean, even before the pandemic, everything we were trying to do at TMR was around encouraging women to kind of get rid of the guilt and make that time for themselves and for a bit of headspace. Why, as women, particularly now when it's never been more important, why is it so difficult for us to be kind to ourselves? What is it that's going on?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I think there's a couple of different layers. I think firstly, we think it's selfish. We think it's selfish to be kind to ourselves, because being kind means carving out time for us. It means putting our needs and our feelings not ahead of anybody, but just acknowledging
on the list.
Yes
on the list.
Exactly. And actually, quite a lot of the conversations I have with people when they, when it's clear that they don't ever prioritize themselves, is saying, like, where are you on the list? Where are you on the list? And they're like, I'm not even on it. And actually that first step is like, okay, so what do we need to do just to put you on the list? Like, just to acknowledge you in the things that need to be looked after, just acknowledge you're one of them. And actually a lot of times that's just the first step, going, I acknowledge I acknowledge I'm worth being on the list of priorities.
Oh my goodness. Do you know, there's a really interesting exercise that I've done a couple of times with coaches actually, where they've asked me to think about the top 3 priorities in my family. And you're always thinking, right, I've got to get the kids to do this, and I've got to think about organising the family holiday, or I've got to get so-and-so's birthday party sorted, or whatever. And literally I appear nowhere on the list. And that's such a common thing for women, isn't it? We're always thinking about the kids, the partner, the friends, the business, the work, all of the things that we have to do that are really, really important to us, but then we appear nowhere on the list. And it feels like now more than ever that we really need to address that.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes even when we can see what those priorities are, if you then layer what your priorities are versus how you spend your time, actually even then they don't often marry up, because actually you're like, oh, what are my priorities? Do you know what? It is fun with the kids. How much of that did you do in the last week?
Yeah, a lot of nagging, a lot of please will you put your shoes away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that really gets in the way of us being kind to ourselves is actually, I don't think we know how to do it. I don't think we know what self-compassion and self-kindness actually looks like. I think if you're somebody that really enjoys something like pampering, or you really enjoy, I don't know, time to read a book, then it's easier to go, okay, I know what my self-compassion looks like, or my kindness, and it's carving out time for those. But actually, if you don't know that, if you don't know what those things are for you, it can be really hard to find it. I feel like it took me a really long time to realize that my self-compassion is running in mud. Like, and to other people, they're like, that's really strange. Because it's not running along the pavement, and that's good, and that gets my heart rate up and it gets me feeling good. But actually my self-compassion is being in woods, like running and just splattering mud up my legs, like, you know. But it took me a long time to find that, and I think some people just don't know what their kindness should look like.
And often I think, and this came up in one of the earlier sessions, that you kind of, when you're not being kind to yourself and you're not making that time for yourself, there's this feeling that if you're going to do it, it needs to be something really big.
Yeah.
It needs to be some big gesture, or you know, training for a big event or something huge, instead of, I'm just going to take 10 minutes today and I'm going to read that book, or I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to call a friend, or just something really small that actually can have that massive impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, when you think about trying to build things up, and, you know, one of the things that I know we were talking about earlier is about that kind of sense of overwhelm and just picking too much stuff up. Actually, if you go, right, I'm going to carve time out for myself, and therefore I'm going to train for a marathon, like that's a big thing to find time for.
Yeah.
And it's the same with everything that we're trying to do. We don't need to rush back to the biggest version of it. We can just find something small that takes us a little bit towards it. You know, if the thing that you love is running in the woods, then start by running around the block, or, you know, whatever it is. But it's finding something little that gives you just a little burst of that thing.
Yeah.
Actually, just finding that time will help you find the motivation to find a little bit more time, a little bit more time. But yeah, we definitely need to put ourselves a little bit higher up on that list.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just to share as well, the thing that I've been doing to kind of make that little bit of time, it's going to sound really woo-woo, so I'm just going to preface it. But what I've been doing is just walking down the lane behind my house, and up one field, and there's this really incredible tree at the end of the field, and I just walk there with my dog every day, and I stand and I look at the tree.
Nice.
Oh, it sounds a little bit woo-woo, but what has been really interesting for me is it is almost meditative, because what I'm noticing, I'm taking the time to notice how the tree's changing every day, and it is changing every day. But also, the really incredible thing is it also stays the same, and that when you're going through a lot of change and you're feeling quite stressed and anxious about it, having something solid and stable that's kind of there actually really helps. And it's literally just 10 minutes of my day every day. And that's the sort of thing you're talking about, isn't it? Just finding that small thing.
Absolutely. And actually that kind of sense of change, I think, is really key, because we have been through so much change, and it happened really suddenly, and then actually it feels like really suddenly everyone's told us that we shouldn't be worrying about COVID anymore, and we should just be kind of carrying on with life, and we should be getting back to exactly what we were doing before. And actually, you know, you've mentioned transition a couple of times, but actually I think it's so useful to separate out those two things. Often we don't do it. You know, change is the thing that changes, a situation, a circumstance. And change can happen in an absolute instant.
Yeah.
But transition is that internal process that we have to go through, and it is not time bound, and it's okay that change happened in an instant, but it's taking you longer to transition, because they are different things. And sometimes, very occasionally, transition can happen before change has even happened. Sometimes it's the other, but most of the time it's a process that takes time. And I think we beat ourselves up and we feel guilty again about not being over it yet, not being ready to kind of like jump into things. And that's because we haven't finished transitioning yet.
Oh, Jess, that is so wise. I hope anyone watching is scribbling that down, because that is such an incredible way to think about it, isn't it? That you kind of, accept that it's going to take a period of time and there's no deadline on it, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, it's totally okay. And actually, a lot of if you look at any of the sort of like models around transition, sometimes they talk about this neutral zone in the middle, where you've kind of like, something's ended and you're not quite at the place where you're kind of used to something and you're happy about something. You're in this neutral zone. You're kind of finding your feet and you're trying to figure things out, and it's bumpy and it's messy and it's a bit bleak at times. And that's what transition is. It's finding your way, because you will get there. You will get to the end of the transition. Things will feel okay again, but you don't have to rush through it. And actually taking your time to go through like a healthy transition is how you end up strong and steady at the other end of it.
God, that is such an important message. And I think part of the challenge of this kind of moment in time is that there are external factors trying to rush us through that transition. Not accepting that actually we might want to take our time and try and process what's happened and work out where to go next.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually some of those things aren't within our control. If we get told we have to go back to an office or lose our jobs, or if we get told the kids have to go to school or be involved in certain things, like some of that isn't within our control, but some of those choices are absolutely within our control, and we need to give ourselves full permission to say no to things, or to say not yet, maybe in a couple of months' time, because that's okay too. A no now doesn't have to be a no in a few months' time. And we need to give ourselves full permission and no guilt for doing it. We need to just be able to go, do you know what? I'm still taking my time. I'm still getting used to something. Can we pick up this conversation again in a month's time?
Yeah.
Or telling that friend that you really want to see, like, I love you, I can't wait to see you. Can we do it in August? Can we do it in September? We don't have to get the camping holiday in within the next few weeks.
But we feel like the pressure is there, isn't it? We were talking a little bit about even something as simple as a hug. It's just loaded, isn't it? Because some people are desperate to get back to hugging. Some people might not have hugged anyone other than members of their family in the last 2 years and might not be ready. Because you find yourself in this kind of weird situation socially where you're meeting people, you're seeing people for the first time in a long time, and you're not quite sure what they want to do in terms of hugging. And that's a thing, isn't it, as well?
Oh, it's such a thing. And actually, we are, whether you are introverted or extroverted, whether you, like, regardless of how much you love being around people, we are social creatures. We love connection. Like, we have been desperate to reconnect with people over the last few years. And yes, tactile people like me want to go in for the cuddle.
I'm a hugger. And also
it's almost made me want those hugs more, and I am trying to be really mindful. And actually I think it's also really nice to notice that nobody is really going to be offended. Like, I love a cuddle. Will I be disappointed if someone doesn't want one? Yeah, but only because I want to give them a hug. If they said to me, Jess, can we just like high five or just wave or whatever it was, I'm not going to mind. I'm not going to walk away from that situation thinking they don't care about me.
Yeah.
Because that story we tell ourselves is in our heads. It's that guilt that we're putting on it.
Pesky guilt.
Pesky guilt again.
Pesky.
Oh, it comes up a lot, doesn't it?
It does. Everything comes back to guilt, doesn't it?
And I think I was saying to you, like, I'm one of those people at the moment that actually, I'm really leaning into those hugs, probably in every way that you can mean that. Like, I'm savoring them. I am letting myself get really present in that hug and just enjoy that moment with somebody again. And actually that is bringing me a lot of joy at the moment, to be able to just enjoy it, enjoy that connection. Yeah.
Like those things that might have been something we took for granted, a quick hug when you greet a friend, but suddenly that's like the highlight of your week, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, total change of topic. I can't think of a good segue, so I'm just going to ask the question, because a lot of people have been talking about this kind of overproduction of adrenaline that we're kind of still dealing with in this context of fight or flight. Because all of the stuff that's been in the news the last couple of years and continues to be in the news now with other issues in the world that are just creating this kind of underlying sense of uncertainty and anxiety, and that kind of constant fight or flight feeling. I wonder whether you could talk a little bit about that, and how we might be able to recognize when that's happening, and some of the ways we might be able to manage those feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first of all, it's recognizing that those feelings are absolutely justified. Like, we have felt under threat. Those feelings come from a feeling of threat. They come from
real, haven't they, as well?
Yes, they are real. But actually, what we need to do is start reminding ourselves that the threat is not here anymore. And yes, there is still some concern, and I don't want to breeze over that. But actually, what we need to do now is start reminding ourselves that there is no imminent threat on us, that our nervous system can start standing down. It's been on high alert for so long. And what I've really noticed is this feeling of guilt about feeling joyful about stuff, like this flight, this sort of amygdala flight or fight feeling gets in the way of us trying to enjoy things. Because, like, how many times, Mel, have you over the last 6 months gone, I haven't told the kids we're doing that yet because I don't want them to get excited in case it doesn't happen, or and we do it too. And every time we do that, we're sending a message to our nervous system: threat still here. And every time we go, if it happens, we're reminding our system, threat is still here. And so I think there's some really important things that we need to do just to calm that nervous system down. And like, a lot of that comes back to the self-compassion. Because if you're doing something creative, for example, your brain cannot compute that you can be sitting around being creative and also be under threat. If you're getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger, you're not going to sit down and do some drawing. And so actually doing things like creative activities helps to remind our nervous system that we're not under threat. And affection. So the stats are something like a 20-second hug is as good for your nervous system and working through stress and that amygdala response as something like a 3K run.
What?
Yeah, 20 seconds is a really long time to hug someone. I know I'm going in for the extended hugs at the moment, but that's a long time to hug. But it's because your body feels it. Your body feels held. Your body feels safe, and it calms your nervous system.
Does a hug actually cause a release of a hormone or something?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I don't just mean like a kind of pat on the,
it's like a good old squeeze.
I mean a holding somebody knowing somebody's taking your weight a little bit, that if they suddenly pulled away, you'd kind of have to adjust yourself so that you feel held and it's tight and there's some pressure around your body. And actually that's amazing for your nervous system. So affection is brilliant. Laughing, and again, this isn't like a haha, like belly laughing, like proper laughing. And again, because your brain kind of can't compute the two at the same time, how can you be finding things funny and also be under threat? And that's why like laughter is such a good way to kind of break tension and things like that, because your brain doesn't feel under threat when you're finding things funny. And so there's these beautiful things that you can do, which actually also will help lead to self-kindness and compassion and connection that we can be doing. And for me, it's really about letting ourselves feel joy again, like letting joy back into our lives, and getting really present when there's something nice happening. You know, when you're out doing something lovely with your friends or your family, like, don't pick the phone up, don't start scrolling, don't read the news, just be there, be grateful, notice something beautiful, notice that something funny, just really lean into that joy again, because like joy is so important. If we don't remember to enjoy ourselves, then we don't have any fuel for next time there's something bad happens. Like, joy is the reason that we fight, it's the reason that it's fire in our bellies. And so we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our families to like let the joy in again, so that we can just boost up all those reserves again.
Like joy is almost like putting the petrol in the tank, isn't it?
So so much.
I love that so much. God, wow. Okay, I'm now imagining women all over the country running up to total strangers and giving them 20-second long
20-second hug.
Give me a 20-second hug. That would be a good outcome of this campaign, I think, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
hugs all over the country.
Yeah, hugs all over the country. Or if you're not comfortable to hug, like some beautiful jokes and belly laughing together.
Hugs and belly laughing.
Yeah,
that's what the campaign's about.
Yeah, it is.
Actually, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the importance of community and connection in creating some of these things we're talking about, because I know, although the stats around women's mental health and well-being and the impacts of COVID are pretty dire, but one of the amazing things is that the high number of women in the TMR community who've said that being part of the community has enabled them to feel that sense of connection. And 72% actually told us that they're more active now than before the pandemic because of the connections that they've made through digital communities. So not even with people that they're meeting in person. What is it that's happening in that kind of community and connection and the feelings that brings up that's enabling women to actually feel empowered to start investing in themselves?
So I think it's because when we went into that lockdown, we need that connection, we need community, and we have previously, I think, relied on the communities that we could physically meet up with, and we relied on that kind of sharing physical space. And actually, I think what happened through the pandemic is we realized that it wasn't about physical space, it's about experience, it's about shared experience. And so actually we were able to really utilize that shared experience to empower each other, to cheer each other on, to be, to be that kind of almost like accountability partner, because you wanted to be able to go back to someone and go, yeah, actually I did that thing that I said I was gonna do. I went for that 30-minute run, sharing photos, things like that. And also, I think it's that you knew that when you did those things, it picked everybody up. So it almost felt slightly, it felt selfless a lot of the time to do those, to do those things. Like I remember doing some of the drug running for you around for TMR around South Bristol, and we talked to news crews and stuff, didn't we? And they were like, oh, it's such an amazing thing you're doing. And I really wanted to be like, it's also totally for me. Like, I'm getting out the house, I'm getting half an hour to myself, and I've got all these beautiful reasons to do it, and it's helping people. Like it's the perfect package, really, isn't it? That you get something for yourself, you get that time, you get that space, but also you get to pick other people up by sort of sharing your experiences and knowing that it will motivate somebody else to do something. And I know for me personally, my TMR community, particularly the ladies in South Bristol, were an absolute lifeline during COVID. You know, we were messaging all day, we were, you know, and it was loosely based around doing the relay, but actually it wasn't really about the relay.
About being in contact.
Yeah, it wasn't about the relay. And then actually, you know, the excitement when we got to finish the relay with a run together, because, you know, the restrictions had lifted enough that we could run as a 4, and it felt like such a special thing to be able to do. I think that sense of community hit was an absolute lifeline for many people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also having a safe space to be able to share, you know, when you were finding things hard, or if things were challenging, or if you're pissed off with the kids because homeschooling is not going very well, just having a safe space where you can feel held and share some of those experiences as well is really valuable, isn't it?
Absolutely. And knowing that you can rant about your partner, your kids, your house, and all those things, and the person on the other end of the messenger is not going, oh, she's a terrible mother, isn't she? They're not having any thoughts. They're just
giving you that 20-second hug through the airways, aren't they?
Yes, it was the 20-second, it was the virtual 20-second hug. It was that kind of like completely judgment-free ability to rant, and nobody turns around to you a week later and goes, oh, do you remember how you said those slightly mean things? Slightly.
Yeah.
Remember how you said those things about your children or your partner? Yeah. And they know you don't mean it. They know you mean it at the time, and they're totally there to like, yeah, I'll jump in here and I'll throw some abuse if that's what you need. Yeah, great. Yeah. We can all say that they're horrible. Yeah. But you know, but knowing that was a completely safe space to be able to do that, and you needed that virtually, didn't you? You needed,
because there was no other outlet for those feelings, were there?
No.
Just thinking as we, you know, one of the key things of the campaign is trying to take the pressure off women, and we've talked a little bit already about that feeling of guilt. Just thinking about some of the practical tips we might give to women who are maybe feeling the pressure to go and do something big, but really just to encourage them to start something slow, start something small, to start building regular movement back into their lives. What are some of the practical things that we can leave people with?
So my biggest tip would be to think about micro habits. So this is essentially, imagine sort of thinking, instead of thinking about setting up a full, you know, a really ambitious target for yourself, it's about identifying the one little step that will make it easier for you to reach that goal. And so I'd say the first step is get really clear on what it is that you want and why you want to do it. So if you want to get more active, get really clear on actually, what does that mean for you? Why will it feel great? What difference will it make for you? Let yourself visualize or just get connected with those beautiful whys and how good it will feel. And that's a really important part of just motivation. And then break it down. So if you want to first of all, get specific. So if you want to get active, go, okay, so what could active mean for me? Maybe that's, I'm going to go running twice a week. I'm going to go running for 30 minutes twice a week. All right, brilliant. So you've got this goal that you'd like to achieve. And then actually it's about mapping out what needs to happen for you to go running that first time, that 30 minutes, that first one, what needs to happen. And if you kind of map out that activity, you know, you need to, I don't know, say you're doing your run first thing in the morning, you need to set your alarm for 6 o'clock, and then you need to put your kit on, and you know, whatever those steps are, map them out, and then just focus on the one first step. So like for me, to get myself to exercise in the morning, my first step, my micro habit, is not to snooze my alarm.
I love that. I'm terrible for snoozing.
Terrible snoozer.
Oh my goodness.
But it's not to snooze my alarm. And so I'm not focusing on the whole thing. I'm focusing on not snoozing my alarm. Because if I don't snooze my alarm and I get up, the chances of me doing the other things are hugely increased. But if I try and focus on the whole thing, it's too big. So just find that micro habit and just concentrate on that. And then when you've got your micro habit, make it obvious. Do like, see what you can do to just make it as obvious as possible. So that might be putting your phone somewhere really, like, not near you, but putting it somewhere really obvious, or putting your running kit somewhere really obvious so that you will be reminded of it. And then make it as easy as possible. So like for me with the snoozing, my phone is now the other side of my room, which my husband hates, but I have to get out of bed. And so I've made it easier for that to happen. Or if your first step is putting your kit on, put it all out the night before. It's like, just think it through and make it make success as easy as possible, but just focus on that one tiny first step, and everything else will feel easier once you've done it.
God, that is such brilliant advice. I'm just thinking, because I'm terrible in the morning, Jess, but just thinking through in that scenario, for me, the first step would be my habits before I go to sleep at night. So I'm terrible for scrolling on my phone and going to sleep later than I should. And then I just literally no way I could get up and go for an early morning run. But changing that one habit and making that commitment to not scroll on my phone, to turn my phone off at a certain time, that actually could be the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you don't have to go, right, my habit is I'm not going to scroll on my phone. I'm going to be in bed by 10 o'clock having journaled and written down 10 things I'm grateful for. That's the amazing habit. But actually, those things might come, but just start by going, my phone is turned off at 9 o'clock. Or, and just focus on that one thing, because actually if it's off at 9 o'clock, you might end up in bed earlier, which might mean that you get more sleep, which might mean that you get up earlier. And so, it's just that one little thing.
Yeah, I love that. God, that feels so achievable to anyone, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
God, Jess, that has been such a fantastic conversation as always. I've been scribbling notes. I'm sure anyone watching this session, I'm writing a list of people I need to go and have 20-second hugs with.
Amazing.
Who might not mind.
Next time you see me in the street, Mel,
I'm going in for that 20-second hug.
Yeah.
Might be tears if it happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, as always, an absolute pleasure. So much good advice, Jess. Thank you so much for giving up.
You're very welcome, Mel.
Session. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions that we'll send your way when we share the link with everyone in the groups.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the session. Speak to you soon. Bye.